Good afternoon, everyone. It is chicken box time. It is 12 noon. This is your host, Kevin Impeccable Peck. We're smiling because we're laughing. We're laughing not only on the inside, but on the outside. But what's going on the outside is not a laughing matter. On the chicken box today, we are talking about Black people versus voter suppression. Let's get right to it. Let's not hesitate with what we're talking about today. I'm a Gen Xer. I'm going to introduce my host. If you've never joined us before, this is a place where we come to break stereotypes, where we come to just inform, educate, and inspire. We are on the Afro-American Newspapers platform. If we just popped up on your thread, do us a favor. Hit the share button. It's a little arrow that goes like this or like that. I don't know which way you're looking at your screen. And you can share it because sometimes the information isn't just for you. It's for all of us to connect as a community and dive in and make ourselves stronger. Voting, the clock is ticking, everybody. Voter suppression is on, but we're going to press on. I thought about suppression. I thought about oppression. I thought about when they try to put the knee on our neck, compression. But guess what? None of that is going to stop what's going to happen in November. So, Dr. Draper, my boomer millennial friend.
Well, good afternoon to our co-host, Kevin Impeccable Peck, Misha Green. Good to be here representing the baby boomers. And as Kevin said, I'm a boomer / millennial because my mother told me the way that you live a long life is to believe in God, give back to your community, and hang out with younger folks. So here we are.
Hanging out. Misha Green, my true millennial friend, who I don't know if she ever wants to be a boomer, but she writes sometimes like she has been here for a while. How are you this afternoon, this wonderful afternoon, if you're in the Baltimore, Washington area?
Yes, it's gorgeous. First of all, hello to you all and hello to everyone watching. And I'm doing really well. Kevin, to answer your question, I don't know if I ever thought about wanting to be a boomer, but I will take that. I write like my wisdom.
Hey, you brought up a good point on the chicken box. Wisdom, the Bible says, is available for everybody. You just got to ask for it. Isn't that crazy? Some people walking around for all these years and didn't know that they could just get wisdom by asking. Whew, that's your impeccable moment of the day. Anyway, today we're talking about Black people versus voter registration. We're waiting for a guest to join us. He's just going to be coming out of a press conference. Joshua Harris, the vice president of the Baltimore NAACP, will be joining us shortly, but it's lunchtime, breakfast time, or nighttime, depending on what part of the world you're in. And we want to get into this conversation. As you know, if you're paying attention at all, the African Americans have historically been held back from the vote, from it literally being illegal for Black people to vote. Then there were laws to try to stifle the vote. Now the loopholes within the voter rights, all the new post office things. It's so much going on right now. Don't get distracted. Don't lose focus to what the task is. You got to vote. Despite the challenges, we have historically fought and died for the right to vote. That's right. We as Black people have died for the right to vote. So don't take it lightly that what you have, and you may say, maybe I'm not going to do it. It has been our people who have died to vote. In 2020, the fact is, they're still trying to suppress us. They're bringing out old tactics. They're trying to stall. They're trying to make the lines appear as if they're so long and it's such a arduous process. They're mixing up the dates. They got the ballot box. They got this. They got the early voting. But listen, stay focused. Look for yourself. Fact check when and where you need to be. Early voting has started in most part of the country. And Al Sharpton and others, our activists who have been around really fighting for our rights for all these years, man, they're still out there fighting some of the same fights. They're just trying to do it a little intellectually different, but that's what happened. Misha Green, why don't you jump in? What else have you noticed about voter registration?
Voter suppression.
Or suppression.
Yeah.
Ooh, I'm going to register, not suppress. It's hard for me to say negative words, people. I'm sorry. Anyway.
No, thank you for asking. Voter suppression was not something that I paid attention to in great detail until the 2018 midterm election. That is when I realized that was something that we still are are struggling with. Obviously, I remember years ago, and I can't remember what year it was exactly, but when it was Al Gore, George Bush, the first time around, that was probably like 2000 or so. And I remember that happening. And to me, that was a version of voter suppression. But when I looked at what happened, particularly to Stacey Abrams in the gubernatorial election in Georgia, and saw that there were many ways that who became governors Georgia found ways to suppress the people of the state of Georgia from voting in a way that would have been favorable towards Stacey Abrams. We saw it again in the state of Florida. And so, and we even saw it in the state of Maryland, really, during the 2018 midterm election. There were lines, voting booth issues, ridiculously long lines, people trying to close voting stations early. So these are things that we're still seeing, not only in the most recent election, but it is an issue. It's a serious issue. So I won't go into the stereotypes yet, but I will talk about the fact that we have to be aware and ready with our voting plan for 2020, because it's something that we are still facing. It's not something that was of the past or something that our grandparents and great grandparents had to fight. This is still something that we're facing today, whether it be with the mail-in ballots, whether they're switching ballot boxes or putting false ballot boxes. This is still something we're facing today. And so we have to have a voting plan and make sure everybody in our world does as well.
Absolutely. If you just tuned in, this is the Chicken Box broadcast on the Afro-American Newspapers Media Network, and we are talking about Black people versus voter discretion. The conversation's getting started already in the chat. Thank you, Yuri, for joining in the conversation. Beatrice, Laura Phillips, thank you. Those who are watching who would like to comment, jump in the conversation. We see you. But our Sherry Adler, Adair, or I might be saying it wrong, but I'm just going to say Sherry. I know I can get that part right. We are pushing on, and our special guest, Joshua Harris, from the Vice President of the Baltimore NAACP, has just chimed in. Josh, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. How's it going? Thank you so much for having me.
Let me not shorten Josh. Let me call you Joshua, because that was the name that got into the promised land. So I'm not going to shorten that name, Joshua. Welcome to the Chicken Box. Great to see you. I know you had a press conference, but if you could just tell everybody, kind of give us the 1 minute speech or pitch, or I don't know what to say, just 1 minute about yourself and about what you've been doing at the NAACP.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Again, thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm happy to join you. I am Joshua Harris. I'm the Vice President of the Baltimore City NAACP. I've been in that role for about a year and a half. And prior to that, many people in Baltimore City may know me. I actually ran for mayor in 2016 in Baltimore City. And so it's I'm someone who's just committed to seeing policy changes that positively impact people's lives. And so that's the work that I'm doing and that we're doing at the NAACP. Our press conference today was about our coronavirus mobile health education unit and the relaunch of that, and ensuring that Baltimoreans are safe and healthy, because we are voting. And we want to make sure that people feel safe enough to go to the voting booths. And part of that is making sure that they have protective gear and they understand what they need to do to keep themselves safe when they go to exercise their right to vote. So I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure to have another friend from the NAACP. We're getting into, what generation do you fall in? We have a Generation X, we have a millennial, and we have a boomer millennial.
I'd be a millennial, I guess. I fall into that category of a millennial.
You're going to get ganged up on today, y'all. Chicken Box is where you speak your truth. We break the stereotypes, and you get a chance. This is not a time that you shut up. This is the time that you speak up. And we're talking about voter suppression. We're talking about how it historically has been used and the tactics that have been used. And so we're going to start out and get on the Chicken Box. Dr. Draper, let's just get 30 seconds of how you feel. Let's just get it out right now about voter suppression, and then let's move forward with the conversation.
All righty. So voter suppression is not new. It's been around for a very, very long time. And while I'm on the box, I just want to say to all of us, including myself, let's not get fooled. Let's not get distracted. Let's not get discouraged just because folk are trying to keep us from the polls. That's not new. They've been trying to do that. But we are a people of resolve. People have been through so much in our history. And so we didn't let enslavement stop us. We didn't let Jim Crow stop us. And certainly we're not going to let folk who don't understand the resiliency and the determination of Black people to stop us. And so while voter suppression is real, our resolve to overcome it is more real, if I can use that term. And so I just want to encourage everybody who's watching to just, push through. I mean, even the ballots sometimes are a subtle way of voter suppression. I know here in Baltimore City, that ballot, and we did it by mail. By the time you read Joshua Harris, the front, the back, and check this and sign that and make sure you don't do that, you feel like, wow, you've been to college. But whatever it takes, let's vote.
Absolutely. I think it's right. And the most important thing is just to make people feel comfortable in exercising that right, creating spaces to have conversations about what does this person do? What does a comptroller do, right? What are the differences between the positions, the council person and the mayor? Creating those spaces so people feel comfortable going to the polls, exercising that right to vote, so that it doesn't become a hassle because they understand how it impacts their direct lives every single day.
Absolutely. That's Joshua Harris joining us, Vice President of the Baltimore chapter of the NAACP. Along with all of our friends that are listening in, please share this information. Please encourage. A lot of people wonder why they should vote, or if their vote really matters, or if I'm going to vote, then what's going to happen. And hopefully, before you leave, part of that question will be answered. One, our people died for the vote, and this is the system that we live in right now. And so we can't really change anything until we get in. And so it's great to see people, change agents like yourself that are listening, and also like those on the chicken box today who constantly work for change. Misha Green, I know you're itching. What's happening? How you feeling?
No, I'm feeling good. I'm so inspired by hearing everything that we've had to say thus far on the show. I mean, while we know that voter suppression is a real thing, I'm ecstatic that people in all generations, right? Because we're representing for everybody, other than the silent generation, who there are members still here and kicking it and killing it in the game. But I'm really, really happy that we are all saying we have to have a voter plan. We have to be educated. We have to know who our candidates are so that we can be ready and feel prepared to vote and cast our ballot. So I'm excited. Should I be sharing stereotypes?
Hey,
right
I want
now
you to,
well?
this is like the chicken box, right? I know we have a little bit of structure, but we have to, let's just flow. It's Thursday.
Yeah. Thursdays are flow. I didn't know if I should get back on the box or if I should be doing my job. Y'all know I like the box a lot too.
Absolutely. Well, I'm for the first time being able, because when you host, you kind of get distracted. I'm trying to share, so I'm just I'm filibustering. I'm just trying to share to all the groups, because I think that it's important. It's crunch time, and we cannot and will not be suppressed. I just realized sometimes you share it on your own timeline, but then you look, if you hit the more option, even Facebook has tried to suppress you a little bit. They made it harder for you to share it on the group. So you got to hit this button, and then you got to hit the more option, and then you can go to a group or a page you manage. And so don't just share it to your profile, share it with some of the groups that you've liked and belong to. If you like a group, you're able to share in that group. Go ahead, Misha. I'm sorry.
No, again, as we always say, sharing is caring. So please, guys, share. This is such important information. And we don't want only you to be armed with the knowledge, but we want everybody in your community and extended communities to be ready and have a voting plan as well. So no one's voice is suppressed for this very important election. All right. So as you guys know, I always must emphasize that these are general stereotypes. These are not necessarily views of the Afro-American newspaper, but we are talking about the fact that voter suppression is a real thing. And with real things, we know stereotypes come along. And so here they are. First of all, there's an idea that voter suppression no longer exists since the passing of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. We'll talk about that later. Black people are uninformed and thus should be suppressed to vote. That is a stereotype. It's an easy thing to trick African Americans into having difficulty voting, from having a lot of candidates, from familiar names or repeat names, right? There's so many ways that people think that they can trick African Americans, which is why we have to be educated voters. Black people, they think, won't travel far if they've been redistricted, or they don't know that they'll even be redistricted. Again, just these are all stereotypes. Black people are always looking for an issue / can't be happy, and so that people are saying, we've heard a lot of people say, particularly as we're leading up to this upcoming election, that voter suppression does not exist. Again, that we are just looking for a sword to die on. And of course, that is not the case. But again, we'll talk about that later. And that Black people don't know their voter registration status. Again, another stereotype. And finally, that it's someone's fault or if they are prevented or suppressed from voting in the upcoming elections. And it's their fault if they missed an opportunity to put in their ballot. So these are stereotypes, and I'm hoping that we can address them and talk about them in a constructive and productive way.
Absolutely. I'm sure it's other stereotypes that you have heard if you're listening in and you're able to text in the chat any other stereotypes that you have heard that have been said along those lines. Okay. Oh, no, I was just reading. I'm sorry. Dana Pay, that's what happened when your wife does a comment. You're like, uh-oh. Anyway, did I forget to take the trash out? That's not suppression, y'all. Anyway, if you're just tuning in, this is the Chicken Box. We're talking about Black voter suppression. We're talking about some stereotypes now. If you know of any stereotypes, put it in the chat. We thank everybody. Craig Talley, who's listening in, and we'll maybe get to his question, talking about Ice Cube working with Trump, about the CWBA. Maybe we'll hit on that question before we get off. But we have our very good friend Joshua. What do we say to the people who says the vote doesn't count or doesn't matter? You on mute? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that there are those out there who think that their vote doesn't matter. And I think that that's the important part that extends beyond this election season, right? And we're organizations like the NAACP, we have to continuously do voter education throughout the year. Because people think that because they don't understand the direct connection to their everyday lives, right? Understanding the difference between the federal government, the state, and the local, where your city, a municipality, wherever that may be, understanding the various roles that they play and understanding how it directly impacts your lives, whether or not you have a dog park, whether or not recreation centers are open past 5 o'clock in your community, right? These are things that are local issue. How much funding your school gets in Baltimore City, that's all determined on the state level in our state legislature. And so knowing that those are the elected officials that determine what that budget is that goes towards education. But then once the budget gets determined on the state level, there has to be someone locally, the mayor, who determines what portion of that money actually makes it to where it's supposed to go. And so I think that having these conversations again and creating safe spaces where people oftentimes voting and understanding politics can be very intimidating. And if no one wants to feel like they don't know something or like they're the dummy in the room. So people are intimidated to ask questions. And so rather than ask the question, they tend to write it off and say, oh, well, it doesn't matter anyway. And that's just not true. And so what we're working to do is really create the space to empower people to feel like they understand the process. One of the other more important things that I think is critical during this election, particularly, is that there is a lot of misinformation that is being shared, and being able to identify what accurate sources are and teaching voters how to see through emotional appeals versus fact and data, right? That's extremely important for us to not be moved by, oh, I like this person because I knew their grandmother, whatever it may be, but really understanding that I should like this vote or this candidate or this person because they have a plan and a strategy to put in place that will actually move our city forward. And so being able to answer those questions and not just be caught by a commercial that moves us or tears on our heartstrings, but actually understand that these are the hardcore reasons why I believe that this candidate, whether it be for president, whether it be for mayor, whether it be for city council, but these are the reasons why I believe that this candidate is the best person for the job and why they're going to advocate on behalf of my community's needs. That is the most important part for us, to really teach voters how to see through the emotional appeals that oftentimes are put forth in speeches and in commercials, radio ads, but to actually, what am I looking for when I go into the voting booth, and what should I actually be listening for that actually is a plan to move our city, our state, and our country forward.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has, I think, Zoom or stream etiquette. They just hit their button just in case their phone or doorbell rings. Everybody's home, everybody. For those who just tuned in, thank you for tuning in. This is the Chicken Box on the Afro-American Newspapers News Channel, which has been serving, educating, informing, and inspiring the community for over 128 years. Speaking of history, Dr. Draper, what are some of the historical voter registration tactics that you've seen or heard of?
Listen, there are so many, but let me say this up front. We're talking about stereotypes, and this show is to also debunk myths. It's a myth that all voter suppression things are illegal. There are legal voter suppression activities that are going on every day because of the laws that have been passed. And so if you look back in history, there were laws that were actually passed, or in some states even today, there are laws that say you have to have this kind of ID or that kind of ID, or if you do a mail-in ballot, somebody else has to witness it. All of those things are part of voter suppression, and it goes back all the way back to the passage of the 15th Amendment in the mid-1800s. It guaranteed the right of men to vote of all races, including those who were formerly enslaved. And so initially that resulted in higher voter turnout, especially among Blacks in the South. And so in the 1880s, the United States presidential election, a majority of eligible African-American men cast a ballot, listen to this, in every single state except for 2. And in 8 southern states, the Black turnout was equal to or greater than the white turnout. So you know what happened. At the end of Reconstruction, folk looked around and said, wait a minute, these folk of color, they're going to outvote us. They're going to be more than us. And so after 1890, less than 9,000 of Mississippi's 147,000 eligible African-American voters were registered to vote, right? And so when those voter suppression laws went into effect, you saw a deep dive in the number and the percentage of African Americans who voted. So what were some of those tactics? Let me lift up this. Some of our viewers may have seen this. This documentary, it's out now. I highly recommend it. It's called Rigged, the Voter Suppression Playbook. It's fairly recent. It deals with a lot of what happened in 2016 and then the midterm elections, the legal ways, the playbook. There's a playbook. There is they make it sound like it's something reasonable and rational, but the bottom line is all about suppressing the vote. And so the old ways of, we might not have poll taxes any longer. You may not be confronted with how many jelly beans. Did you all know that people had to guess how many jelly beans were in the jar?
What?
In order to vote? Yeah, a big jar would sit there at the voting place, and you would come in as African American, and then they would say, "Okay, how many jelly beans are in the jar?" And if you didn't guess how many jelly beans were in a jar, that was the literacy test. Can you guess how many jelly beans are in a jar? And so poll taxes, that was one way. The jelly beans in the jar, that was another way. Literacy tests, just in general, on U.S. history and that type of things. And then sometimes, it was just property owners who property owners didn't have to take a literacy test. So that meant that those of us who didn't own property, we had to take the test. All of those are, certainly things that were done to suppress the vote.
Can we mention a modern day form of voter suppression that we're experiencing right now in the state of Maryland?
One modern day voter suppression tactic, as I said, is to require ID or to require someone to verify that when you send in a mail-in ballot, that's your signature.
And
another one is Texas, for example. Take the state of Texas. As big as Texas is, one ballot box on the street per county. Dallas County is huge. Millions of people. That's a tactic, voter suppression tactic. Out in California, where the Republicans put out fake boxes. That's voter suppression. Joshua, you may know of some others, but both of those are very, very clearly voter suppression. Well, let me tell you another voter suppression tactic that's going on right now, just to put in people's minds that mail-in voting is not safe. So mail-in voting is not safe. The post office is a farce. You're not going to get your mail on time. Dead people are going to be voting because somebody else is picking up their ballot, right? So all of these things put in people's minds that there is something flawed with the voting procedure where when you look at the actual facts, that's not true. That's not true, but it's the mindset to say this is a phony election, it's fake, it's dishonest, and that's voter suppression.
And I think if we just look at the change in the voting strategies in the state of Maryland from the primary to the general election to now require that people submit an application to request their ballot when we didn't do it in the primary, that's a form of voter suppression, right? So many people did not know that they had to request their ballot in the general election because they didn't have to in the primary election. It was mailed to them automatically. And so to limit the amount of people who are actually casting their ballots instead of sending it to everyone automatically is a form of voter suppression.
Or sending out the wrong ballot. Right? Sending out the ballot in Spanish to the English speakers.
Let me ask you a question, Joshua. Do you know when you drop your ballot off, is it any kind of check? I mean, is it do you get a receipt? Do you know what happened? Do you scan something? Is there a barcode that says, okay, I definitely dropped mine off?
Nope.
That's voter suppression right there.
There's no real way to verify because we have drop boxes all over, and then you can drop it off in person or do it in the mail. The best way that we have is to those signatures. Did you make sure that you sign your ballot when you submit it? That's the best thing that we have to verify. But you're right. There's no way to confirm that this person was voted until that vote is actually counted. And so we can see who's turned out to vote as they update that information. So when you mail in your ballot, once it's counted, it'll say that this person voted.
For those with a smartphone out there and y'all listening, take a picture for yourself. If you're not getting the receipt, that just listen, we are smarter than all of their suppressing moments. We have to come together and share the information. We have to share early voting. We have to share about the real ballot boxes. We got to share about the mail-in. And those who can, go to the poll. Okay, be inconvenienced. If you stand in line for an iPhone, I'm not saying that you do. If you stand in line for a concert ticket, what you used to do before the pandemic, if you stand in line for anything or you spend time on anything, if you have binge watched something on Netflix for a few hours in a row, it is worth going to make sure that the vote is counted more than ever. I mean, if you just listen to the VP debate, and we just heard about all the judges that were elected, 50 new non-African American to lifetime positions. It's more than just the presidential vote. But this is the Chicken Box. I'm your host, Kevin Impeccable Peck, and this is Black people versus voter suppression. It's only a small number of people who are suppressed in their mind, and you can unlock it by just fact checking. Fact check everything. Don't just hear about voting, like Joshua said on the commercial, and all of a sudden you have an emotional feeling about the situation. All of a sudden now you're woke. Well, maybe now that you're woke, you need to fact check in your community. The reason our communities are going down is because everybody that are elected can't do everything. They need our help to do what we can do around our neighborhoods and around our communities. And if you don't know who's running in your community, now's a chance to hurry up and get it. Now, it's ways to fact check people. Not all of it's right on the internet, but you can find out more information than you could in the past about the candidate. So when you go in there, you're not going like this to see who those other people that you've never heard their names are that you're going to vote for.
Mm-hmm.
If you're just listening, when we say Angelia, Julius, Jundis, Thomas, thank you for stopping by. Let me see who else just tuned in. Yuri from Canada. We have you on to connect with you with your email. I'll give you my email before we leave, or hopefully my wife can put it in the chat or put an email that we can get in contact with you. We'd love to connect with you in Canada. Thank everybody. Camellia Johnson, who just tuned in. We're talking about voter suppression today. This is Black people versus the voter suppression, and we are so intelligent. We shoot for Black excellence, and we are going to push through. We have pushed through. Before we get off, I'm going to look. Our director of archives, which we have the most extensive archives at the Afro-American newspaper, over 128 years of just amazing archive. I'm going to try to pull up a file she sent and show some of the pictures that we had captured in the archives. And Dr. Dre, why don't you tell them about the book?
Okay, so the name of the book is To the Front. It's To the Front, and if you go to tothefront.us, you can either download a PDF, or I think you can still order the hard copies. But this book really was produced in commemoration of the anniversary, the 100th anniversary that women's right to vote. And in the book, you see lots of images, though. Some of them, if you didn't know the date and you really weren't looking at the style of clothes, you would say this was 2020. People in long lines waiting to vote, people carrying signs, you must vote, people protesting against voter suppression. And so a lot of those pictures from the Afro archives are there, and really talking about how the women organized. And here we are in 2020, when many of the political pundits and others are saying that it's going to be women, especially Black women, who are going to turn this vote. We are fired up and ready to go, ready to vote. And white women who supported the current president in 2016 are coalescing and saying, we are going to have a record turnout of the vote. And so this book is a 118-page, beautiful color, 4-color book, suitable for a coffee table. And, Kevin, if you pull it up, you can see some images, but it's tothefront.us.
Absolutely. If you just tuned up, we got some people saying, I'm getting fired up. We got, listen, Black women, I saw, man, we got to get it together. The Black women, they stepping it up on the business tip. I'm seeing they stepping it up on the mode. Fellas, we got to get going. The ladies have been leading the way, and there's nothing wrong with that. But fellas, we got to be right there with them, if not right ahead of them, to make sure that we can kick the door and hold the door for them as we go in. You have to share this information if you care anything about your community. I ride through I'm in Baltimore, I'm usually in Atlanta. I ride through the different communities, and I see, especially in our Jewish community, just how tight-knit a lot of times they keep their dollars circulating. They keep their community in a certain way, and we have to care more than ever about our community. Now, the presidential election affects us all in some way, but the local policies are made by the local policy makers, and we help put them in there. And then once we help put them in there, we got to hold them to what they ran on, quote unquote, said that they were going to do. You know what I mean? All these certain things that sound so good. We've been hearing since the third grade election when you were running for class president, same kind of things. But how much of it do we actually see come to it? It has to be a litmus. It has to be a checklist, Joshua. What do you think?
Yeah. No, I think that's an extremely critical part. Again, because what happens is a lot of people, they show up to vote, their candidate wins or their candidate loses, and they think that it's over. But the reality is that particularly if that candidate wins, they are going to now face obstacles where they have colleagues who are, whether it's on city council or we're talking about the state legislature and they're a delegate or a senator, who aren't going to agree with them and who are going to vote against them. And that candidate, if you supported them, they need to know that if they make a decision that is reflective of what their community wants, and their colleagues don't agree with it, that it doesn't matter, because they're there to represent their constituents. And they know that the next election, because they took the right choice and represented their constituents, that their constituents are going to have their backs. And sometimes that means needing to send emails. That means needing to comment on social media to say, hey, I thank you and appreciate you for making this decision when no one else would stand up and do the right thing, right? They need to know that that support is there. Otherwise, it's easy to kind of just go with your colleagues who may be being influenced by lobbyists or other big money influencers. But we have to stay vigilant once a candidate is elected in office to really hold them accountable and support them so that they can feel like they're making the right decision, and people will support them in standing up to the system. Essentially, that's a critical part I think we often forget, and we have to continue that message. And it's not just about this election, but it's well beyond that. How do we stay informed and involved?
Man, we got to stay informed. We got to stay involved. This is the Chicken Box broadcasting from the Afro-American Newspapers Facebook page, which is 128 years, the oldest family-owned Black media company in the country. And we've seen it. We've seen it, and we've archived it. But Misha, what's going on in the culture right now? What are you seeing in the popular culture right now as far as voter suppression is concerned?
So first of all, I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. I'm looking at all these comments, and I just thank you guys again for caring about this subject. Remember, sharing is caring. So go ahead and share this stream because it's really, really important.
Every time you say that, Misha, in Baltimore, you used to say Sharon and Karen. Anyway, you'll get that.
I know about the Maryland accent. You know I know about the Maryland accent.
All right, keep going.
Okay, so yeah, but obviously pop culture always is sort of that place that we can go to that either is talking about what's happening or is reflecting it in some way. And the good thing is, though we know voter suppression is real, pop culture is doing a lot of things, particularly social media platforms and celebrity icons are working to combat voter suppression and making sure we get out the vote. So admittedly, I know I live in a bubble, and many of you all do as well. If you're tuning in, right? We sometimes are preaching into the choir, but that bubble can be burst, and we can share that information. And so the awesome thing is that I'm seeing a lot of people are talking about voting, whether or not they know whether they're going to actually place a vote in the ballot. I mean, about whether they're going to place their ballot. I do know that they know that there is an election happening and that they're talking about it. So that's a good starter. Now, we hope they, of course, place their ballots. And so there's the voting sticker on Instagram. There's voter registration stickers on not only on Instagram, but also on Facebook, which, you know, Facebook and Instagram are family. But we're seeing this voter message getting out on social media, which is awesome. There have been so many memes about the election, and particularly candidates, right? And even though sometimes it's not the nicest thing, it's good because it's helping people get informed, whether they're just looking up a fly, right? That's a good sign in the right direction, that people can become more informed. And so continue to share these things that you think are funny, because although it might just be something funny to you, it could inform another person once they dig deeper. I've seen a lot of people, and particularly a lot of artists. We saw Lizzo, who accepted her Billboard Music Awards yesterday in a vote dress. And so we're seeing a lot of people emphasizing the need to get out a vote and a voting plan. And there's so many voting campaigns. I cannot list many that there are, but a few that we know, of course, is Black Girls Vote, Rock the Vote. There's the Black Men Initiative with People for the American Way, NAACP, which I'm sure Joshua did just tell us about, and nationally and locally are doing amazing things and have so many voter campaigns. And then we remember those voter campaigns of the past, such as Diddy's Vote or Die. Some of those things we can kind of come back and really get people excited again about voting. The one that
can I mention one that I just think was great recently? And it may be controversial, but I would like to shout out the exotic dancers in Atlanta and the video they did, Get Your Booty to the Polls. And some people may not like it, but they are reaching an audience that maybe traditional organizations that do this work are not reaching. And the fact that they had the know-with-all to say that this is an important election and we need to make sure that everyone knows and understands the importance of getting to the polls, like that is amazing. And I commend them on that, on reaching an audience that, quite frankly, the NAACP may not be reaching. And they saw that important to do that.
Absolutely.
So true. So true. I love the Get Your Booty to the polls. It definitely is important in all ways to get to the polls.
In all ways. Okay. This is the Chicken Box. It is Black people versus booties on the pole. No, Black people versus. This is the Chicken Box. Wake up, everybody. We're not trying to be. You got enough news that drives you bananas. This is the part where you get to laugh a little and really get educated and informed and break some stereotypes. Joshua, being from the NAACP, what, as a local and as a national organization, have you guys employed to really get the message out this season?
Well, for us here locally, the critical point has been the message and teaching people what you need to do to vote this election. Because of that change from the primary to the general election, the fact that you had to request your ballot. And so what that process, we've really been pushing out a lot of graphics. We've been traveling different places to make sure that people understand that process on what you need so that people don't miss out on requesting their ballots and that they know what are their options, knowing that you can vote by mail, knowing that you can vote by drop box, or knowing that you can vote early, or you can vote in person on election day, that these are all options for people. And so really making sure that people understand that process. So many people were confused about the application to request your ballot. And so we've done a lot of work to make sure that people understand that process and they were able to request their ballots to vote. So that's one critical thing. And then, of course, nationally, a lot of our work is really making sure that we mobilize our bases, right? If we make sure that we can turn out our communities, our constituents, NAACP has more than 900 chapters across the country. And so if we can mobilize our voters to really just turn out our base, we know that this election right here is critical. There is an urgency of now like never before. And when we talk about this presidential election, it is critical. Particularly, we see now there's just been a nomination for the Supreme Court Justice. We know that every victory that Black people in this country have had has come down to the court systems. Whether you're talking about Brown versus Board of Education, the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, it all came down to the courts deciding, having judges who decide to be fair and unbiased. And what Donald Trump is doing to our courts, essentially, if they have the same views, will ensure that we never see another victory in social justice or progress if we do not turn things around. He has appointed 3 Supreme Court justices now in a court of 9, and he's appointed nearly 200 circuit court judges across the country with lifetime appointments that will be sitting in courtrooms that will be determining on whether or not an officer is charged in unarmed shooting of a civilian, right? Whether or not whether or not there was racial discrimination in a situation, right? And so we have to make sure that these judges are unbiased and they're able to have a lens that is reflective and accurate of the masses. So this election right now on the presidential level and all the way down is extremely critical for people to turn out to the polls. And so getting that message out to really mobilize our base and understand that it's not voting like our lives depend on it, it's voting because our lives depend on it.
Absolutely. Dr. Draper, I know the Afro has a long history of just teaming up with the NAACP. And yes, they are still around. You just heard it, 900 different locations. A lot of people want to know what you do now. Was that just for them in the past? You know, and as you can see, Joshua said he is a millennial. So it is not just for the past. The millennials are getting involved in organizations that advance. You know, we might not like the C in it, the colored, but it's still Black. You want to call it whatever you want to say. We are advancing the mindset. We're advancing the ideals. We're advancing the community. They're advancing. You know, some people like to stay in the past. NAACP wants to keep moving into the future, and we're all about Black excellence here at the Afro and the NAACP. Joshua, we thank you for getting on. This is the Chicken Box where you can speak your truth. So never be afraid to say poll at the Afro, okay? Because it exists. It's like walking by something and like, acting like you don't see it. Our community is different. We come in different shades. We got different, I used to have hair. We got different hairstyles. We got different tastes. We got different ways we dress. We're different, but we are also alike in the fact that we have to deal with the same struggles, not individually, just because maybe you had a little more education, a little more money. We have to deal with it as a whole community, because that's how we're going to advance. We can't leave. It's no man or woman left behind in this struggle. So we can't be suppressed. He can't be suppressed, and you not be suppressed. So if that person suppressed, you're suppressed. That's my chicken box moment. That 30 seconds, just in case I don't get it later. Dr. Draper, I'm sorry, I jumped right in.
Let me ask you, Kevin, can you pull up this week's Afro? It's not even out yet, but I sent you a PDF of it earlier. I want to know if you can pull it up, because it's all about voting. In fact, the couple of things while you're pulling it up, one of the things that you'll see you can go to afro.com. I don't know if it's posted there yet. Are you there? Or not?
Do an extensive search right now for it.
Okay.
And there it is.
All right. There it is. So Black Lives Matter, vote. No matter what, we will what? We will vote. I'm on the box now. Keep on down. We were on the box, the entire front page, going down a little bit, Kevin. Those are live to Georgia, Kevin, by the way, in your home.
No, don't say it.
In your state of residence. In your state of residence.
You live in that place as well. Okay.
All right. Word in Black. I'm promoting everything on the front page. Y'all getting this for free today. Word in Black is a collaboration of 10 leading Black papers across the country. The Afro, the Washington Informer, the New York Amsterdam News, the St. Louis American, the Houston Defender, the Dallas Weekly, the Sacramento Observer, the Michigan Chronicle, and the Seattle Times. Go back a little bit, Kevin. We are on this coming Tuesday, October 20th, on wordinblack.com. That's the name of our collaborators. We have Westmore, Bakari Sellers, Kristen Clark, among others. You'll see their pictures there. We're doing a forum, 6 p.m. Eastern time, where we're going to be talking about this very same subject on a national level. And then on next Thursday evening, the NAACP, Joshua Harris and myself, we're moderating a mayoral forum right here not the whole front page, because the Lakers did win the championship, but NAACP and the Afro, we're hosting a mayoral forum for our Baltimore City mayor's race. Joshua, I'm glad to be co-hosting with you. I believe this may be one of the only forums where all the candidates are showing up.
What?
And we're going to stream it live through the NAACP's Facebook page, and they have a few thousand followers through our Facebook page that has nearly 250,000 followers, and not all from Baltimore, but because of the nature of this particular mayor's race, we're glad to be doing that. And so one, to lift those things up, and I'm off the box.
Absolutely. If you tuned in, this is the Chicken Box. Maybe you came in late. Maybe you in the West Coast getting breakfast, on the East Coast taking lunch. When is lunch anymore when you're at home all the time? It's like, do you snack all day? And just quick question for streaming etiquette. Turn your camera off when you're chewing, okay? If you're having your food, please turn your camera off, and your mic when you're talking to your husband or your wife when you're screaming. Just remember to mute your mic. Anyway, that was just a little note in case you've ever done it. You know what I'm saying? But Misha Green, I forget, but I don't forget. How about some Afro facts for this week?
I can give you some Afro facts this week. This week's Afro fact is inspired by October 15th, 1969, really through the 18th, and after, as it started on the 15th, but kept going. So on the 15th of October, a graduate student by the name of Willie Black, who was also president of the Black Student Union, wrote to the University of Wyoming, his school, about the university playing Brigham Young University in a football game. And BYU had a ban, it's actually the Church of Latter-day Saints in general, had a ban against the ordination of Black priests. And because of that, Black wanted to bring this ban to the attention not only of the University of Wyoming, but also to the 14 Black players on the football team, who hoped that there would be some sort of protest. And so the team decided to rock Black bands during the game on October 18th. However, head coach Lloyd Eaton, who found out about the plan to protest, expelled all 14 players, leaving an all-white team. Now, news of the players' expulsion from the team quickly gained local and national attention, causing protests even from other teams that University of Wyoming beat, which was, maybe not that ironic, right? But major networks such as CBS, NBC, and even Sports Illustrated covered the story. However, University of Wyoming stuck to their decision, and while the men did not play, many still graduated from there or other institutions. And though the men did not get their respect then in 1969, in 2002, a statue of the 14 was erected in the Student Union on the University of Wyoming campus. And in 2009, the 40th anniversary of what they call the Black 14. I don't know if I like that, but the Black 14 was acknowledged, and the LDS Church of Latter-day Saints Institute at the University of Wyoming made Black armbands in tribute to everybody who was involved, and everyone who attended the event got to wear those armbands all those years later in 2009.
And that is your Afro fact. I like Black 14 only because it was, I pledged, if anybody else pledged, it was 14 people on my line. I know that was.
Okay, so then
it's 14, but 14 feels good to me. I was born on the 1-4, so anyway.
Okay, I'll take that. That's
the Black 14.
They're Black, and so it's like, yeah, and they were discriminated against for being Black, and now we're gonna call them the Black 14. That was my thought.
Look, I want to share this Black fact real quick, because I found this picture last night, and then it hit me that tomorrow, October 16th, is the 25th anniversary of the Million Man March. There were 850,000, mostly Black men, it was organized by Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam, and didn't get a lot of play. There was a panel last night with some of the organizers, and they said only the Black press really covered that march, which had more people than the 250,000 estimated 1963 march. So that's a Black fact too. The Million Man March. If we can get that many men together, Kevin, as you said earlier, to get to the polls, I'm a firm believer that if men vote, if men take the lead, the rest of the family takes the lead. And so just want to lift that up. Not that we women won't vote on our own now. We're not waiting for brothers to take us to the polls, but it instills in children and other people. So 850,000 men. And we have a picture. We sent a photographer. They were on the roof. I came across that picture last night and showed it from an aerial view. And it was huge. And yes, much greater than the inauguration picture from 2016. That's it. I'm finished. I'm off the box.
No, that was
what year ago? What year was
1995.
25 years later.
Yeah.
Right. Social media wasn't even jumping then, because if
social media wasn't even thought about then. But
no, but it was a major thing. My sister and I were just talking about it. Just this quick aside. My sister is, I think, 12 years older than me, and so she was in high school at the time when it happened. And she talks about how no one showed up. My parents made her go to school, and no one showed up in class, and so her white teacher let them go to the event. I mean, and just hearing that, even the educators were supportive of this event, and her being a young Black person and getting to attend. So this was a big deal, and I got to shout out Dr. Chavis from NPA, who was really, really instrumental in ensuring that the Million Man March was what it became and what it was, and he was the organizer for that.
Right, so he was one of the organizers, and he's on our panel for Word in Black on Tuesday night. Dr. Ben Chavis, who has, by the way, his own television show starting, and so a lot of the icons, Jesse Jackson, Stevie Wonder was at the Million Man March, and Louis Farrakhan did say, "You can't come to the march, stay home. Don't go to school and don't go to work," and a whole lot of African Americans did. And so I'm saying to everybody, exercise your right to vote. Don't wait for somebody to give you the day off. Take the day off.
Mm-hmm.
And you have plenty of opportunity to vote before that you don't have to take the day off. But people say, well, I had to work. That's just an excuse. Let's get to the polls no matter what.
Absolutely. If I gave you a free ticket to Hawaii, you would have been off. Anyhow, I was there in 1995. It was an amazing day. Men came from all over the country. It was a peaceful gathering. Nobody was fighting. Nobody was inebriated. Everybody was there. and a great mindset. Joshua, were you there?
I was not. My dad left me at home. I was upset.
How old were you?
I had to be 11 years old.
Okay, you could be upset. It got tight out there, y'all, for a minute. The bathrooms were, you had to find them, you got, sometimes it got real tight, but it was all love for those who were watching, who experienced that. Was a great experience. It was a great gathering, and someone said that we could do it again, fellas, so we can do the Million Man Vote. We can get out there and take that same mindset and make sure that we go out to vote to make a difference, to begin to change these policies, move some people around who are not doing what they need to do for the community. It starts with us. You can say nothing's changing, but nothing changes until you change your mind. If it's not made up, to go to the polls and go. Okay, and you have to make your mind up. You can't just sit back. You can't listen to the commentary. If you're waiting for these debates and you still haven't made your mind up, I'm not telling you who to vote for. I'm just telling you who not to vote for. Anyway, and if you look at the image when I said that, then that's what you already know who you're ready to vote for. So the time is winding up. The hour is winding down. The hot grease is now hitting, and now whatever is burning inside of you, Joshua, I see it. Joshua, you got to come back, because we need to talk about Black people versus the NAACP. We need to spend a whole show on the NAACP just to indoctrinate some who've never known really about it or never cared to look about the history. But it's a vast history. But just to bring it up to date, like, what does it mean today? Just like the Afro, what does it mean today?
Tell us how to be members, Joshua. Make sure you tell us how to become members.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I think that just in closing, I'd like to say you brought up a really good point that we are the ones we've been waiting on. A lot of times we'll wait, or we think that we'll elect someone who will save us and do all the work, and that's just not true. We are the ones who will put them in office. We are the ones who will hold them accountable. We are the ones that will make the change. Or as my grandmother used to tell me growing up, those 10 two-letter words: if it is to be, it is up to we. And really understanding that each and every one of us has a responsibility on creating that change in our communities, showing up to the polls, and educating ourselves, and then educating our family, our neighbors, and our loved ones to ensure that they can go to the voting booth as informed voters with data, information based on plan, strategy, and fact, not based on emotion, but what can actually create change. And so that's the work that we're doing at the NAACP. We've done for more than 110 years now. That's the work we're going to continue to do here in Baltimore City. And if you're interested in joining and doing that work, you can find us at naacpbaltimore.org. You can become a member. You can message us on Facebook at NAACP Baltimore. Or on Facebook, on Instagram or Twitter. We are available on all those platforms. Send us a message. We'll send you the link to become a member if you're interested. Or if you're interested in becoming a member of the NAACP in general, you can visit naacp.org and you can become a member there so that you can begin to contribute to the work that the NAACP is doing to fight for social justice and equity all around the country.
Absolutely. Misha, hot grease, 30 seconds, chicken box. Thank you, Joshua. Always a pleasure to hang out with you online. It feels like I know you, but we never really met in person.
Yeah, no, thank you, Joshua, so much for sharing everything that you did today. I learned quite a great deal today, and I was just sitting down writing, if it is to be, it is up to we. I love your grandmother's words, so thank you for that. My time on the box, I just want to emphasize again how incredibly important it is to create a voting plan. We think that we can just place our ballots, and sometimes it is simply that easy, but we know that voter suppression, like we talked about this whole episode, exists. And so thus we want to have a plan so that there's no way that can stop us from making our voices heard on November 3rd and past that. Because again, it's not just about who's sitting in 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, but it's also who's occupying our local courthouses, who is sitting on our city councils, and who is our mayor, governor, etc. So we need to ensure that we are doing the education necessary to know who we're voting for, creating that voting plan, and getting literally everybody and their mamas out there to vote.
Speaking of that, it looks like when you were thinking, you're like, I thought you were gonna pull out the crossing guard and get the crossing guard in there, and the cafeteria lady, and everybody else.
Well, I'm hoping that people don't have access to those people because they're quarantining safely. However, yes.
All of those. My 15 seconds, I'm gonna let Dr. Draper go last, but our 15 seconds, my 15 seconds, of course, why do people call you? Tell them they're doing a chicken box. It's like, how do you turn all of these things off? Nowadays, your watch rings, your computer rings, and your phone rings. I forgot what I was going to say. Dr. Draper, go ahead. I'm going to come back.
I just thought about, thank you, Joshua, so much. And to my co-host, Misha, and Impeccable, and to everybody who's watching. You know, I've been trying to watch the comments the same time, you know, Misha too. And so thank you for your wonderful comments. I was just thinking another way that our vote gets suppressed and our voice gets suppressed is to say that organizations like the NAACP are not relevant in 2020. You know, you guys are still around, or to say that the Afro, you know, we don't read newspapers. Well, the Afro is not just a newspaper; we're a Black media company, and so there are all kinds of ways. But listen to this. Here's what I think is a form of voter suppression. If the independent voices in our community can be shut up, then we will not have those outlets to speak our truth, like we do on the chicken box. Do your homework. Look to see who's behind a lot of these organizations that are all of a sudden Black, and they've got Black content and Black news, and they're Black, and we're flocking to them. Behind the scenes are not people that look like us. And what happens a lot of times when that is the case, when they're ready to shut it down, they can shut it down. So we need to have our own platform like a Facebook. We need to continue to have our own organizations, and we need to support the NAACP. They were on the battle line. A lot of us like to throw that at the end of our resume. The NAACP. Well, the membership is cheap. Baltimore branch, I think it's $30 a year, even though I encourage people to be a life member. So I just wanted to put a plug in for, come on, join the NAACP, join the Urban League, become a member of the Afro at afro.com. It's $100 a year. We'll even let you pay by month, you know, so, and you'll get all of the news and information. So I'm off the box, but I just want to say, let's support Black businesses. Let's support Black organizations, not just those that look like they're Black, but let's support the ones that are owned by us, are for us, so that we can together make a change. And I'm not saying that there's some that are owned by other people that don't have our best interests at heart. I'm just saying that the motivation is not the same.
Absolutely. The word of this year is fact check.
Fact check.
Fact check. Everybody remember what I was going to say? I hear it for some reason. If there was bathroom suppression, would you still make it to the bathroom? That's all I want to know. That's the question I'm going to put out there. If there was bathroom suppression, would you make it?
You mean when there was bathroom suppression? Because there was bathroom suppression. Black, colored only, and white only. That's
absolutely. But I'm talking about right now. You know, bathroom might have been, but the tree was still around the corner. It's only a certain amount of time that you can hold it. So that's how you should feel about your vote. Get to the polls. This is a Chicken Box. We will see you next Thursday, same time. Bring your breakfast, lunch, or dinner and come and hang out with us. And yes, if you want to know where the Chicken Box came from, it came from Baltimore. If you're from the area, it's 4 wings and fries. That's a Chicken Box. We've turned it into where we speak our truth. Until next time.
You got bread in there.
Oh, you gotta put the bread in. See, Joshua, that's a new thing. Put the bread in there for Joshua, for the millennials. Anyway, Joshua Harris, VP of Baltimore NAACP, Dr. Draper, publisher of the Afro, Misha Green, DC editor, and myself. Thank you for tuning in. Share it and encourage someone to watch it and subscribe and join all the organizations that we talked about. You got to get involved. You can't just talk about it, be about it. It's the we, Joshua. Thank you and have a great day.